is a good example. This is an Austrian sugar bowl from 1718. And if you think about this, it's really a rather gruesome picture. It has this little black guy standing over a sugar bowl as if he's going to lift the sugar bowl. And what's in the sugar bowl but the products of his labor? So, as I said, in the late 18th century, literally his flesh and blood. I mean, sugar cultivation was horribly dangerous to life and limb. And so the reason they had to import so many slaves is that it was the hardest kind of New World farming. So the death rates from sugar cultivation was much higher than tobacco or cotton or even rice, which was pretty horrible. So it really is the blood of these guys in the sugar bowl. But no one says this in 1718. It's fine. In the late 18th century, it's not fine. So you start producing sugar bowls and pitchers and things around with your teeth set. Health for the sick, honors of the brave, success of the lover, and freedom of the slave. So it's kind of great. It has a little bit of the novel, right? And it's sort of part of a these were done by Wedgwood, but these are important mass-produced pottery firms in the 18th century England. You have the same sorts of stuff in France. You have some of it made by German pottery firms. So there's a huge popular culture of this. And Chris reminded me that there was an exhibit at the Victoria and Albert Museum. The British Museum. If you go online, you can find pictures of dozens of these sugar bowls of this sort. So here you can West Indian sugar not made by slaves. So the argument goes, and this is made by some important anti-slavery people. The slave dealer, the slaveholder, are virtually the agents of the consumer and may be considered as employed and hired by him to procure the commodity. Look at the other way around. If a family of 4 that uses 5 pounds of sugar per week abstains for 21 months, they prevent the slavery or murder of one fellow human being. 8 such family, abstaining 19 years, save 100. And so on. O ye who are at ease, sip the blood-sweetened beverage, thoughts like these happily ye scorn. In other words, you have your cup of tea with this, you're drinking the blood of someone, and you're not paying any attention to it. So, what happens overseas is actually not just somewhere, and vaguely related to what you do, it's directly related to what you do. And that brings us to Berkeley. Right? So this is absolutely the same kind of story. This Nike boycott, student-led. The sugar boycott was led by women. Women is the sort of art consumers, the people who bought the sugar. But I hope you can see the connection now. I mean, as an institution, structurally, and in terms of communicative technologies, in terms of kinds of ideas. The boycott matters because what you do here matters to people somewhere else at a distance. And you have an obligation to, because you're buying a Nike actually makes a difference. The argument goes. We tried to put the YouTube version of this online, but it didn't quite, for technical reasons, didn't work. But you should check this out on YouTube. If you type in Nike boycott Berkeley, you'll see it. But they were supposed to not be wearing clothes. There's less nudity than you think. So those of you who want to go to this for the salacious thrill, forget it. But this was it. Okay. So what I hope I've done for you, so far, is to show you that there is a narrative structure and a cultural infrastructure for these humanitarian narrative, in which one begins with facts, one begins with literary and other versions of imagining these facts as actually happening to someone like you, and then one begins through an understanding of causal links that what you do actually can and should make some difference in the rest of the world. Is that argument sort of okay? As far as that argument goes? It's clear whether it's true or not, we'll leave aside. Yeah.
Okay, I was just thinking in the past few slides of an example. So we're talking about sugar and we're talking about clothes. But you know how every woman wears the standard diamond wedding ring?
Uh-huh.
What would be a mechanism of social change to?
Well, I think there is actually a movement. The question about the diamond wedding ring. There is actually a movement now to talk about diamond wedding rings that are not produced in these war zones. And we can look this up on the web, and I read about this. You know, they're produced in the Congo. It basically supports the civil war. And they're jewelers who have signs up saying that we get diamonds from other sources. So there's this whole consumer movement now to be aware of the provenance of what you buy. Absolutely.
Do you think that's a little bit different because it has to do with ideas and values of kinship as opposed to sugar and t-shirts?
Well, I mean, in what sense do you think diamonds are more? Say it again.
So a diamond wedding ring is, a standard. If you have a diamond wedding ring, it's a representation of, kinship and
Right.
value,
Mhm.
whether American or
Right.
wherever.
Right.
So I just think it is an interesting thing to think about when you look at human rights. What are you going to engrave on the inside of your?
Of your wedding ring. I see. That's right. No, that's interesting. I mean, so you're sort of combining the issue of the wedding ring, which is this affective relationship between two people, with a more broadly affective connection. I mean, the interesting thing about this is, those of you who follow this sort of stuff in the newspapers and on the web, you see that there are a lot of efforts being made to connect this humanitarian action with something personal. I mean, sometimes, you get notions, don't give a wedding gift, contribute to Human Rights Watch. I mean, you people, or don't give a funeral, don't send flowers, give to some organization. I mean, so there is a way in which people who are involved with this kind of stuff invite you to connect their occasion with these international movements. But as product boycotts go, the sugar boycott, as far as I know, is the first international product boycott in the interest of humanitarian action and the claim for human rights. Yeah, Professor Swerdling.
I noticed that there's an interesting disparity between Jefferson's draft of the Declaration of Independence and the final version of it, which has to do with slavery. And in the draft, he accuses the king of having waged cruel war against human nature itself, violating its most sacred rights of life and liberty and the presumption of the people who never offended him, captivating and carrying them into slavery in another hemisphere, or to incur miserable death in their transportation thither. Now, that's
well, you know the answer.
all eliminated.
You know that. You know the answer to that.
I mean, how did it?
Well, the answer eliminated is when they were, that the guys who were producing the founding fathers were almost to a person, except for the New England guys, slave owners.
But he wrote this.
Well, he wrote it. He was, as you know, deeply conflicted about slavery. He manumitted some of his slaves. He had as a mistress Sally Henning. I mean, Jefferson was torn up on this issue of slavery, as you know. But what you also have to remember with this issue of slavery is that, huge amounts of money were at stake. So George Washington freed his slaves on his deathbed. His wife didn't free the slaves that were part of her dower. And it was like someone saying, okay, you don't believe in something, so give up your house. Okay, some of us might give up our houses, but it's a big deal. I mean, significant. I mean, I don't have the numbers. Anyone have the numbers on their heads? I mean, I can find this. Significant parts of Southern slave-owning wealth were in slaves. So it was a big investment, a slave, a really big investment. And so I think it was sort of like the strange thing in the Constitution. It just became impossible to. I mean, as you know, it's a hugely compromised document. Okay, if slaves aren't human, they don't count as human. Why do they count for population in terms of apportioning Congresspeople, which they do in the Constitution? I mean, it is there's a previous book. It's an impossible institution. I mean, it's very weird to have people actually be chattel slaves. And the American version of chattel slavery is one of the most draconian in the sense that there's probably no escaping from it. It really does say in the Dred Scott decision you guys read, you cannot be a citizen if you're of African origin. That is to say, you're in this position that Hannah Arendt speaks about. You do not have the protections of the state. Full stop. That's an amazing claim. If you're human, you can't in principle not be a citizen. Right? So what I mean is they got themselves caught up in a totally impossible situation.
I agree, but
I don't,
to